There we go. Hey, how's it going, universe? Welcome to another episode of Zoobox Goes to the Movies. This week, Dan Profitt returns, past and future guests. It's been a long time coming. It hasn't been the same.
I know it's been a lot of you and Big Paul doing Stanley Kubrick movies, which, as much as I love you and I love Big Paul, and I kind of like Stanley Kubrick, the whole vibe has gotten so dreary and dark and serious and kind of heavy. You know what I mean?
Actually, Paul even he pulled me up. He was like, "Dude, can we just do like a weird movie next time? Can we just like talk about some fucking crazy weird shit?" And I was like, "Yes, of course we can." We did. We took a little break during Christmas, but Paul is such a Grinch. He's such a he's such like a an Ebenezer Scrooge. He's like, "No, dude, A Wonderful Life is really negative." I'm like, "Go fuck yourself, buddy."
Yeah, his takes on "It's a Wonderful Life" were so heartbreaking, so grinchy. You know what I mean? So humbuggish.
Even Miracle on 34th Street, he didn't really have. He's like, "No, dude, this is about commercialism." I'm like, "Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah, I get that. I understand. I do understand. I get it. It's a commercial for Macy's, but like, the sentiment is not like a bad sentiment.
Well, we're here tonight to correct all these wrongs. We're
Yeah,
here tonight to well, that's why I wanted to do Mad Max with you because honestly, it's such a Reese's peanut butter cup. I mean, it's an easy thing to talk about, especially the first one, which there's not much to. And yeah, it's like a great movie on one hand, and it's kind of a terrible movie on the other hand. But the
yeah.
one thing about it is that there's just not much to it, and I figured it could be an easy chat for us for me to get back into the vibe of Zuboc's
Get
Go to the
back
Moon.
in exactly. Bring us back into the swing of things. Have a little fun because this is
Yeah,
a fun movie to talk about. It's a fun movie, despite its many flaws. Like we last time, I think was the last time we talked. We talked about Scanners. Was that the last
yeah.
thing we did?
I believe Scanners was our last one.
Yeah. And it's got like the same. I think Scanners is probably, I would prefer Scanners over the first Mad Max, but I think they're similar in the sense where you kind of, there's like a thousand caveats that you can like kind of bring to it for why you like it. But you still kind of like the jankiness of it. You like the spirit of how it was made, probably more than the movie itself. Like that's kind of how I feel about it sometimes. Although there is some inspired things about this movie. It is a weird gonzo Ozploitation movie. It came out during the boom of kind of Aussie filmmaking. That's how they were able to get a movie made at all during the mid to late 70s. There was like this just boom of just crazy, weird, dystopian horror movies and whatnot that came out of Australia. And Mad Max kind of comes in the middle of that era. And George Miller, his feature length debut, he's never done anything before. He was an emergency room doctor apparently, and he had like an entrepreneurial mind, and he's like, people are making money making these movies. He's like, I got to make a movie because I got to make some money. Like
And
that was
apparently,
like where,
he just cut his favorite parts out of all those movies and stitched them together and made Mad Max.
yeah, because it's like, what do Western audiences enjoy? Specifically, what do American audiences enjoy? And it was like, car crashes and bikers, and that was kind of a vibe at the time in the 70s. A little bit like dystopian sci-fi stuff, a little nihilistic. So he kind of just went down that route. Although I don't want to short sell him because I don't think it was completely like cynically made. I do think George Miller, and has proved out through the rest of the Mad Max series, it was definitely a little bit more thoughtful than I think like just kind of leaving it there would give him credit. But so what's your personal history with the Mad Max? Like, have you been watching this since you were a kid? Is it something you came to later?
Well, my introduction to George Miller was Babe and Babe Pig in the City,
Yeah,
which are still two of my favorite movies. Actually, I haven't seen them in years, but they probably still would be if I watched them. Um, but no, I Mad Max. My introduction to Mad Max came from the cultural zeitgeist that it left behind. All the apocalypse in leather assless chaps and studs kind of thing,
yeah,
which became like a staple of the apocalypse, especially as the Fallout video game series kind of uh, took that concept and made it like the bedrock of its whole universe. I'd say probably my introduction to Mad Max was the Fallout games because it draws so much from that universe that
yeah.
when you actually finally watch a Mad Max movie, you're like, wait a second, I've been here before. Um, I think that I know that the Road Warrior was my first one, and I forget exactly how I got into it. I think I started seeing clips of it on the internet. I think I was on a local. Here's my brain telling me the history. I was on a local music message board in Boston, and people were kind of posting memes from Mad Max too,
Yeah.
and I like didn't get it, and so I just decided to find the Road Warrior because that was the one that all the memes were coming from, and it instantly became one of my favorite movies. I guess it was my mid 20s, and I immediately watched the sequel, Thunderdome, which is a
Yeah.
terrible movie, my least favorite Mad Max movie. And I said, okay, there's got to be something else to this series. So I dug up the original and watched it probably a couple years after I watched Road Warrior, and I was completely shocked at how different it was in terms of the tone and everything because it's the origin story not only of Max but of the world that Max inhabits, and the world that Max inhabits was once our world. So we get to see it in its final throes, and it's not as apocalyptic as you'd think.
No, I
But
mean a lot of that is, it's just all kind of it nods its hat to like what's actually going on in the world without really explicitly showing you.
yeah, a lot of stuff comes through on like radio broadcasts or lines of dialogue that get dropped from one character to another. You don't really see how bad it's getting because you're following the character of Max and he's kind of out in the outback. And to him, it kind of seems like it's just this biker gang coming into town, kind of like what was that Brando movie? Was it The Outsiders?
Oh, the Brando movie? Oh, god damn it. I know exactly what movie you're talking. A Rebel Without a Cause. Is that
No,
Brand?
that
No,
was
that's James Dean.
yeah. I think it was called The Outsiders. Was it the Brando movie where the bikers kind of like all come into town and terrorize the town and stuff? And to Max, it kind of seems like he's dealing with a local gang. But also, you see at the seams that society is kind of getting much more tender. You know what I mean? Like even when the cops prosecute or arrest these guys and bring them in for prosecution, like the townspeople won't even show up to be
Yeah.
witness against them because they're all terrified. And it just seems like the rule of law is so thin now that the people don't even have faith in it. And I know part of it is probably budgetary, but like the shots at the police station, it's like there's nobody there. There's nobody in the police station except like there's three cops and they have like a couple of cars and it's just like a ghost town.
Oh, it's like definitely kind of part like serendipity, just because they didn't have a budget. I mean, this movie was made for around $350,000 Australian. Um, most of the cast and crew is paid in beer. They like literally had no money. All the extras are real biker gangs. Like half the cast, they're real bikers. They're real. Those are real
Yeah.
dudes. Those are the dudes that go. They actually stole all the motorcycles at the end of the shoot.
Oh shit.
Apparently, but it adds something to the movie. It adds this eerie quality to the movie. And
Yeah,
what I
because
I like about it, it doesn't feel specifically Australian. I think that's why it probably worked. It crossed over to Western audiences because it just feels like and it also is structured like a B Western, like it's a B movie Western. Like they're
yeah,
out on the frontier. Like that's the kind of vibe of it.
yeah, and the whole thing you feel isolation everywhere you go in the movie. It almost seems like there's nobody around in these little towns, and you know it kind of makes you feel paranoid. Like there's no like even if this biker gang comes in, we have the police. They come in and terrorize us. There's 50 of them, and there's three cops. Like what's going to happen?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So, and
and the
I like.
cops and on the cops. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say I appreciate how it's not as apocalyptic as the other ones. Not so blatantly apocalyptic because we get to see the slow slide of society down into people wearing assless chaps and fighting over gasoline.
But yeah, it's the world on the precipice, and I think like the character of Mock or Jesus Christ, Max Roxtansky, however you pronounce that, um, is a metaphor for the world tipping over. Like that is, I think that's the kind of he represents metaphorically like what is going on in society. He is the last good man. He actually has a sense of duty, a sense of virtue. He believes in the law, even though he's seeing it frayed and pull away. Even his comrades, even his fellow officers, they're basically criminals. The only
Well,
thing
Max,
that separates the two groups is a badge because they're
yeah,
all
Max
hooligans. They're all
himself.
fucking. They're
Max says it in relation to him, being kind of a madman himself, that at this point, the only difference between the criminals and him is the badge. But, at some point, it's like, in order to fight these criminals, don't you need somebody who's on their level? I mean, that's why Max becomes so successful at fighting them, because he's the only one who's got the gall to actually go all the way and just disassociate himself from the law entirely and just go after them.
Yeah, because he believes, he has kind of, I think, he hasn't given up on like kind of the old world yet, on the way he thinks it should be, and it's not until like his partner gets burnt up, and then eventually, towards the end of the movie, his son gets killed, his wife gets like disfigured and maimed, that like he just kind of snaps and he lets go. I don't think the movie actually does a very good job of charting Max's trajectory. Actually, Max is really not even the focus of the movie until the last half hour. I mean, the movie is like an hour of world building and tertiary characters and learning about Toe Cutter and all that stuff more than it is about Max. Even to the point where his introduction in the movie is weird, because they introduce him like he's going to be like a major player. Like you just see kind of quick shots of him while his fellow officers are out chasing the Knight Rider, and it looks like it's going to be this big dramatic thing, and it kind of isn't.
Well, I feel like that kind of is all over the movie. Maybe it was a budgetary thing, maybe it was a first-time director thing, but there's a lot of things that seem like they should be a bigger deal than they are on screen. Yeah. Like when Goose crashes at the beginning, he's just kind of casually sitting next to his bike, talking on the radio. There's no sense of urgency, even when one of the cops gets like the steering wheel through his throat. Like these moments aren't played for great urgency. And I think that probably came from George Miller just not knowing how to put those sequences together in a more dramatic way. I mean, everything's just so kind of like on the screen,
which is crazy, because like when you get to the Road Warrior,
yeah, 45,
no more.
Okay, sorry, Sean.
You're okay. Once you get to the Road Warrior, it's like he's a different director. Like he's a great director by his second movie, because the Road Warrior is like leaps and bounds, like as from a technical perspective. Even if you think about the action, the pace, the sense of escalation, the sense of urgency, all those things that you're just mentioning, they're all in the Road Warrior, and that's his next movie. So it's crazy like how far he came from this to that, because this is kind of a roughshod movie. It feels like a really indie movie. In some ways, I think that works for it really well. I love the car stunts are fucking rad,
But the pacing is terrible. I mean,
it
suffers from a lot of the same problems that Scanner suffers from, where the middle third of the movie is meandering. You can't tell what's going on. You can't tell what the stakes are. You don't understand what any of these people are kind of up to, and it's because the director is having a hard time communicating in a succinct way to the viewer, and he maybe doesn't know how to direct the actors in a particular way. But this movie really suffers from it. Like the worst, most egregious scene is the wife at the beach scene, where the wife walks from the farmhouse that they're staying from through the forest, and she's getting like stalked through the forest by this gang. And then she goes to the beach. She lays on the beach. She goes out for a swim. She sunbathes. She packs up her stuff and then walks back through the forest where she gets attacked by the gang.
Yeah.
So we spend a good 2.5, 3, maybe 4 minutes of her like getting to and going to the beach, when the reason for that scene to exist is for her to get attacked in the woods. So you could have had her never even make it to the beach in the first place and just had it paced a little more exciting.
I think that, or it's supposed to be tension building, and it doesn't. Like the way, yeah, because you're supposed to feel like this looming threat. Like, when are they gonna pop out? When are they gonna come get her? And you never even feel like it's ever a thing. It's so almost like meandering and lackadaisical, and just kind of so matter of fact. And yeah, it's a weird sequence. Like, I understand what he's like trying to communicate, but he did not successfully do that. But
and little things like it took me actually more than a dozen views of this movie. In fact, I didn't really realize it until I saw a YouTube video about the making of the movie. The part where the toe cutter finds the picture of Max's wife and kid and Max in his helmet, I never really realized that Max planted that there as like a warning, like I'm not coming for you kind of thing. Because things like that they're just not made very clear by George Miller.
Hmm.
And because it's one of those older movies, for some reason it's just a little harder to follow just because of the way it looks, the way it feels, the way it flows. And I think that that first time director stuff is kind of all over the screen in this. And it kind of speaks a lot to the strengths of the movie because the things that it does well, it does so well that
Yeah,
it becomes all these kind of forgivable little things. I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
when I watched this to review it with you, I sat down and watched it with Caitlin, and there were at least two or three times where she made me pause it and just said, like, I gotta, like, I do not want to watch what's going on. Like the part where the gang is holding Max's toe cutter's gang, like, is holding Max's kid in their arms,
Which,
and
yeah.
Light approaches them. Caitlin was like, pause it, pause it, pause it,
Which,
because
but
like,
that was a sequence where Miller actually did create a sense of tension.
oh,
Like,
big time.
I mean,
And I'll say this, I'll bring this up now. This is a different movie to watch after you have a kid.
100%. Yes.
Because I've seen that scene a dozen times, but I've never watched it since Theo was born, and I felt the same sense of dread that Caitlin felt when it came on. Because when you see a child on screen and you have a child, you project your child onto that
Oh,
child.
yes.
Period.
Children in peril in movies. Oh my God, it's so hard to watch now. I mean, there's been several times, like I was watching this movie about these Japanese kids during World War II, and like their parents die in the war, and then they end up getting because of their culture. They're like ostracized from their family, and they have to go like live in a cave, and they both get like diseases and slowly die, and they don't realize that they're dying. Oh my God, dude, I bawled my eyes out. I was like, I've never cried like that in a movie. I mean, ugly face, snot coming out of my nose, just
Yeah, and
awful.
it really it kind of makes you get off on the power fantasy of Mad Max even more, because you, like, these bastards, they ran down this child and this woman, and you kind of want to see Max inflict even more gruesomeness on them than he does. I mean, what does he actually do? He runs a bunch of them off a bridge. He runs Toe Cutter into an 18-wheeler, and then he sets the one guy into the trap at the end.
Yeah,
So it's not as insane as it quite could have been, but
yeah, it's more like frustrated Max, you know.
yes, he hasn't quite gone mad yet, but you see that come full circle in the sequels. But yeah, I think you're right. I think that they're like they could have stewed on the Max character more, because he does get lost in the middle
Oh,
almost.
he's a complete, like, he's not the star of the movie. It's so weird. Like the structure of the movie is weird because it's so lopsided. I mean, he's there and you see him like show concern for, like, you would think if you had no awareness of this movie and you were seeing it for the first time and you didn't understand anything about it or never heard anything about it, you would think maybe Goose would be the main character, like for the first 20 minutes of the movie, half
Mhm.
hour of the movie. He's the guy. And
Right.
then Max is kind of in the background, which I understand. Like, I think by the end, you kind of understand that point. That's kind of part of building towards who Max becomes and why Max feels the way he does. But yeah, it's weird, like how lost in the shuffle he gets for most of the movie. And which is because he's not like a bad character. Like I would say, just like you said about, like, having a kid changes your perspective of watching the movie. Having a kid in a family made me kind of understand Max a little bit more. Like the value of like wanting to keep them safe, wanting to get away from it all, kind of like, that's kind of the last act of the movie. He wants to go and protect his family. He wants to get the fuck out of here. And but evil comes. Like that's what evil what is it? Prospers when good men do nothing type of thing. It didn't matter. Like they still found him. Like the chaos of the world still came from Max just because he didn't want to acknowledge it anymore because he felt bad, because he felt traumatized. Like it didn't mean that he didn't have a job to do, you know?
Right. Yeah, I mean, the 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 homicidal rage that I felt the first time that I held my son was very surprising to me. I did not expect to feel homicidal rage, and I felt homicidal rage because there was a part of my reptilian pea brain that kept saying to me, it was like a new program was loading and booting up in my brain. You protect this thing at all costs, protect this thing. And when I was holding Theo in my arms for the first time, I started to kind of like bubble with this potential for rage, and I didn't know why. And I thought to myself, that is your that is your inner father providing a cocoon to this child. You're preparing to shield him from any and all harm. And your primitive brain still thinks that there's like a tribe across the mountain that's going to come and like steal him or something.
Hmm.
But that's not going to happen anymore. But I'm still very in touch with my primitive brain, so I was still feeling it anyway. And I can't imagine. I could talk all kinds of hyperbole about what I would do if somebody did this to my family or whatever. But the reason why Mad Max is so popular is because this is what men want to do.
Yeah,
To
he's
evil. Like good men want to violently destroy evil, and
yes, yeah.
that's why I think guys love this movie so much, because Max is one of those characters who will viciously destroy evil.
Yeah, which is one of the things I think is a missed opportunity in a broader sense of like the series. I don't think Max really has ever gotten to finish his journey back to civilization.
Right.
And
You were talking.
we were
Yeah.
chatting the other night offline or off recording. And that's kind of like I feel like that's the natural conclusion of his character is to come back around to actually be the guy that wrestles the world back into order because that's where he starts.
Right.
So you need to have this full circle like come back to humanity thing. I mean, it's cool. Like I love Fury Road just as much as anybody else, but that's just like it felt like. Well, it's just like it's another Mad Max movie in a vacuum. Like
Right.
you don't. It doesn't have anything to do with his character or building his character. And so as much as I like kind of, I don't hate Beyond Thunderdome. I think it's a weird movie. I appreciate Miller was not trying to repeat himself, but he made a kind of a weird movie, or not a weird, but just kind of a boring movie. I'd say.
Yeah.
Uh,
It,
but like even in that movie though, he has more. He actually develops as a character. There's something else to his character. Granted, it's also another story told by another person. It's kind of contributing to the myth of who Max was and how he travels around and reluctantly does good, I guess. um, so it's never from his POV after the first movie. And that's even in Fury Road, it's really not from his POV, it's Furiosa's POV. That's who the story is really following. Um, so yeah, I always thought that was a bummer. Like I was just kind of like fan wanking, just thinking about like an old man Mad Max movie. I want to see Mel Gibson with the crazy beard out in the desert, wearing the tattered leathers, just one more time. Let's go. Come on.
that would be awesome, dude. And I used to think that wouldn't work, but you're right in terms of, because it wouldn't work in terms of making just another episode of Mad Max. It
No.
would work in terms of actually bringing his character to the final part of his arc, where like you're right, he should finally take up the role of the captain, the role of the person
Exactly.
has to
Because
be.
and that's there's the scene in the original Mad Max, the '79 Mad Max, when he wants to like put in his notice or whatever, and the guy's like he's yelling at him, and he's just like, "Don't you believe in heroes? The world needs fucking. You're a hero. The world needs you. The world needs people like you. You're out
and,
there doing good, and without people like you, it's all gonna fall apart."
and he says it while he's shirtless with like a
I
neckerchief
was
tied on,
watering a plant.
watering a plant. Like that character is such a bizarre character, but he ends up being very endearing.
Well, I love, that's one of like the things I love about this movie, and it's probably just happenstance, but the casting is so great. Like
Yeah.
every character is unique and memorable. They don't get a lot of screen time, but just like their screen presence is so memorable. Like every single one of them, and Miller, to his credit, at least in the edit, like gives everybody a little moment. Like everybody gets a little singular moment that kind of encapsulates who that person is.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of characterization for these people. Like the Knight Rider, he's on screen for what, less than 5 minutes, and he's one of my favorite characters. He's one of the
Yeah,
most bombastic characters in any movie.
like you'll never forget that scene. You
No,
recite like yelling out AC/DC lines.
I mean, there will be times where I'm like driving down the highway real quick, and I'll think about him going, "I am the Knight Rider," and Toe Cutter, He knows who I am.
Well, that's actually the toe cutter, the character toe cutter, and this is another a boon or feather in Miller's cap. He understands that your movie is only as good as your villain, and I think Toe Cutter is one of my favorite screen villains. That guy, Hugh Keys Byrne, R.I.P. He died like 2 months ago, actually. And he's a Morton Joe in Fury Road. If you didn't
Right.
know that, yeah. But
And
he is so rad, dude. Like he's got this weird Manson cult thing going for him, and he's like weird and like abstract, but also just the most menacing, scary dude. You know?
but so understated to the point that when I
Yeah.
first saw Mad Max, I didn't really. There's a lot of things I didn't feel about this movie the first time I saw it, but Toe Cutter, I kind of didn't. I didn't get him as a villain because he's so understated. But
Yeah.
you're right. He is his cool exterior that's never shaken, his sort of over dramatic flair. There's something off putting about this person. You
Yes.
know what I
Yeah.
mean, it makes you uncomfortable. The way he grabs the guy's face, the train station guy, he just kind of like lightly touches his face with
Yeah.
all the fingertips, and he's like, "The Night Rider, you will know his name. You
Well,
will look at him when you look at the night sky."
that's kind of what's the scary. I suppose you could view it as a scary thing is that this guy, these marauders, they have actually an ideology. I think they believe in like chaos and nihilism, but it's something, and they have reverence for each other,
Yeah,
and they demand kind of loyalty and respect. There's a what's this like pretty boy? What's his name? Johnny the boy, the one that's kind of the new guy, right? I mean, there's a baptism scene in this movie. He baptizes him in water where there's a
yeah,
beautiful sunset. Like
that's
he
it's one of
makes
the best
him,
shots of the movie.
yeah, it is, and he makes him go through this rite of passage of lighting Goose on fire. Like there's all these kind of things, and it's all to like it's like all brainwashing. It's all cult stuff,
Yeah,
and
because they're not just bikers; they're like these dandy cultists.
yeah, yeah, they're kind of. I wonder. I really wonder if it was kind of a nod towards the Manson family, because that was the thing that came into my mind, like as a the most closest correlation I can make. Because if I'm thinking of the time period, that
Yeah,
would be the thing
was
that would
pulling a
stick
lot of
out the
stuff
most.
from the zeitgeists of the time.
Yes, yeah, and he gives just a tremendous performance. I mean, it's still something that gets under my skin, especially like just going back to the scene where they have Max's son, and just the way his creepy, just weird vibe. And he does a lot, like you said, subtly, but it's interesting. His character is never like directly doing action. Everybody around him is very violent, and he's not. He's not actually doing anything.
Yeah,
He's just saying things, which I guess is you could say another parallel to Charlie Manson.
yeah, but just so well acted, and I like that they brought him back for kind of a completely different character in
Oh,
Fury Road.
and
Just
Immortan Joe is another one of my favorite bad guys. Like he's so good. My property. Like he just
the
plays it
ultimate
so perfect.
libertarian. That child property.
You want some water? Get your own water. Dig your own well.
Yeah, right. What,
You
you
need
can't
some
make your own
gas?
luck?
Get your own trucks.
But yeah, man. I think that's probably the highlight of the movie is the characterization, the actors diving into their roles. I was watching an interview with the guy who played Pretty. What is his name? Pretty
Johnny
Boy.
the boy. Johnny
Johnny
the
the Boy.
boy.
And there's that scene where he's watching Goose kind of take off, and he's in the car watching him, and he starts like lighting his arm hair on fire with the lighter, and he starts putting it out. And he was talking about how they did that scene specifically to show that Johnny was getting these delusions of power and grandeur, and that he was going to get taken down a notch. You know what I mean, by his own humanity. And it seems like those kinds of things they put a lot of thought into, but then the actual like pacing, the writing, the
Well,
editing.
actually, apparently, and this is not that weird for Miller, I guess with the Mad Max movies, not very much of a script. Took them 12 weeks to shoot it. They did massive amounts of improv. So they shot like for 12 weeks of them just out there messing around, stealing shots. They didn't have permits for anything. Some of the car crashes, they literally pretended they were police to shut down roads. And then the police found out about it, and they thought it was so cool that they helped them for free. That's Australia, baby.
I was just gonna say that's some Aussie
Well,
shit.
Australia in the 70s. Nowadays, if you Facebook post, they'd put you in jail.
Right.
Back in the 70s, the anarchic spirit they used to have out there, the wild nomads out there in the Australian deserts. But yeah, so there was definitely, like, I think that adds to it. Like, they had a lot of room and time to kind of just mess around, and just Miller just shooting tons of material of improv with these guys. Actually, you know who probably comes up looking the worst is probably Mel Gibson. He's so vanilla. He's clearly very amateur. I think in the context of the series, it's good because it's the origin story of Max. He's like
Right.
innocent, and naive. But if you were just to look at that as a performance in a vacuum, you're like, it's all right. Definitely not who he became. But a couple years later, just like Miller, by the time he gets to the Road Warrior, he's got it. He's nailed it. Like, he is kind of the movie star Mel Gibson by the time, like, a few years later, by the time they get to the Road Warrior, a guy that just has like a presence about him and just knows how to communicate a performance to a camera, I suppose.
Yeah, and I mean that is requisite in a character like Max, who always has very little dialogue. That's why it was great that they picked Tom Hardy, because Tom Hardy could write a novel with his eyes, and he doesn't
Yes.
need to say anything to convey a great acting experience.
Yeah, he was kind of it's like a perfect, like, extension if you're gonna do like a young Mad Max thing.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Um, but I think everybody kind of on the set, there was probably like this feeling of being at camp or whatever, and
Yes.
everybody was just kind of,
Being paid in beer, Dan.
yeah,
Being paid in
exactly.
fucking
Like,
beer and hanging out and crashing cars.
so you know that these actors were like there for the acting, and they probably took their little bit characters just as seriously as, like, you know I remember in like drama club in high school we did West Side Story,
Yeah.
and I had like a bit part in it. I was only there because I wanted to like hang out with the girl who was playing Maria, and so I got like a bit part, and they made all of us write like a really intense backstory for your character, and I think that kind of stuff, and it ended up being an incredible performance. Actually, for a high school performance, it ended up we played it really dark and stuff, and it ended up being kind of cool as far as I remember. And I got to watch it all because I was only in one scene. But I think that kind of thing really helps actors out when they think about their character before their character was on screen,
Of
and
course.
what their
Yeah.
character really wants when they're on screen. You can kind of tell that the actors that were in this movie were taking it seriously.
Yeah, because it's their chance to be in a movie. And like at the time, it was the kind of this boom of Aussie indie weird filmmaking. Some of them were able to cross over into America and be successful, like kind of on the cult midnight movie circuit. I mean, even Mad Max, while it made it over to the U.S., it still was a cult movie. So much so that when they released Road Warrior, that they didn't call it Mad Max 2 in America. They just called it the Road Warrior. And also, when it was, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's an English dub of this because they were so concerned people wouldn't understand the Aussie accents. That has a different soundtrack and completely dubbed by Americans. Yeah.
I've never seen that. Must be horrible.
Yeah, it actually makes the movie seem cheaper. Like, it seems it's very odd. But the synth track though, the synth score is actually pretty rad. Like, it's actually maybe more appropriate than, like, Miller went for more of a traditional score because he had kind of grand notions. Your first time filmmaker, he's like, this is horrific, mate. I'm over here drinking my Fosters and gonna have a Phantom of the Opera playing, like, because it's got a very traditional with horns and all
Yeah, and
sorts
you
of
know
crazy
what?
stuff.
But it's completely bland. I don't remember any of the score of Mad
No, I
Max.
don't. I don't find it very memorable at all. But I do find memorable is Max's wife playing the saxophone. And no,
Yes, and Max's wife playing like a stinky sax solo,
I just
and
see like
then
Danny Glover down on the beach looking over. And what's going
the
on?
only memorable musical piece other than that is the terrible song that the woman is singing in the club,
Yes.
which falls victim to the like songs that are written specifically for scenes and movies and stuff. They're not real songs, so they're just garbage.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like, there's a couple of songs on the, again, we're bringing up Fallout and the Mad Max thing, but on the in Fallout 4, they wrote a couple of original songs that were supposed to be like in the style of the songs that they play in those games. For like, I think there's a character who's like singing in a bar,
Hmm.
and they're so bad. They're just like because they're going for the feel of a certain era or the kind of um, just like a general ambiance of a scene, and it's not a real song, and your brain knows that somehow
Yeah.
and
Well,
rejects it.
because
And when you're watching that scene, you're like, this woman is singing a fake song that was written for this 45 seconds of movie.
because they're not musicians, they're not really like that's not what they're plugged into. Like, so you can spot that shit. It's like
But
you
the
can
thing
spot
is,
it.
in the scene, Goose, they're like, they're in the club, and Goose is like totally feeling it. He's like
Oh
into her.
yeah,
He's like giving her
yeah.
eyes and stuff. Thinking of us. Goose will listen to anything as long as it gets him a little fucking box. You know what I mean? Just
Well, that's yeah, because they actually kind of posit him as kind of like a very like a ladies' man character, like you said, and he responds. He's the one that responds the most viscerally to some of the violence because there is something weird. Like Miller just could not communicate the gravity of some of the horrific things that happen in this movie.
yeah,
I mean, like the scene, there's a woman chained to a car she's obviously being abused by the gang, and it just never feels like it's like a dramatic or a big deal. You see a dude running, uh, tearing ass through a field with blood all over his ass. Like this, something really bad happened here, and it's so like I don't know. I guess maybe you could look at it and say like, well, is that intentional? Because they're just like, well, this is the world. This is the world they live in. This kind of stuff happens.
I don't think it is intentional. I think that those things were supposed to land harder than they did. And you're right. It's like this couple clearly got raped.
Yeah.
The Goose gets set on fire. The one guy gets a tracheotomy because of a fucking steering wheel through the throat. Um, a cat just knocked something down that was very loud. And none of these things seem to have any gravity. Hold on one second.
Yeah.
Yeah, none of these things seem to have like a great deal of gravity when they happen.
No, they just kind of they come and go, and like you almost don't remember them.
Yeah, I don't think that that's an intentional thing. I think that that is a like what is that shot? Like, how can you show something on screen that is horrific and yet it kind of goes off like a dud firecracker? Like,
I do. I think it's first time filmmaker stuff. Like, how do you communicate that cinematically? Like, it's not the same as just showing it. You can't just show it. Like, it has
right?
to be. You have to like know how a camera functions and how kind of human psychology to a little bit. Like, what is going to make this impactful? What do we need to see? Do we need to see like lacerations on this woman's arms or on her legs, where the rope is? Like, do we have to slowly reveal this? It's not. It's like very matter of fact. It's like a fucking locked off camera, and you have Johnny the boy sitting in the seat, and then you see a woman in the background, and it just kind of plays out from there, without really much import to it. Which is,
Yeah,
which is
and
definitely supposed to feel important because that's why Goose is so mad when Johnny the boy gets released. He's irate. This is a criminal rapist, and the court system is already like you had said earlier, it's just completely ineffectual. It just doesn't work. These guys
well,
feel
it's like not to bring it too much into our times, but it's like when you'd watch the Black Lives Matter protests this summer, and
Yeah.
people are like burning down CVS and looting and rioting, and the National Lawyers Guild is standing there on every street corner waiting to give them a card with a number on it, so that when they go into jail, they can just call this number and get free bail. I
Yeah, and
mean,
then and if
that,
you lived in certain states, they just let you go. They just didn't
right,
even keep
and
you.
so like that that frustration with this system that's just a revolving door for criminals, that where these slimy shyster lawyers are going to get off the worst people, the worst dregs of society, constantly keep them out of jail so they can keep some coins in their pocket. The frustration that good men feel when looking at a system like this, the impotence, the rage, that's
Exactly.
that's the zit that Max finally pops. He says, "Fuck this! You know what? They took everything from me. They took my wife and child from me. And guess what, kids? It's over now. We're not doing the rule of law anymore. We're doing my rules, and my rules is get a stirring feeling inside themselves when they see something like that, because we all want to do that. We all want to be Batman. We all want to pound evil into jello with our fists, but we can't.
No, exactly. I mean, everybody wants to be the hero, especially in the most dire of circumstances when things really matter. Which is interesting in the development of the character of Max, because he doesn't really become a hero. He becomes one of them. He becomes a scavenger. He becomes a survivor. It's an odd character, I suppose, trajectory. Because when you find him in the beginning of the Road Warrior, like he really wants nothing to do with anyone.
Well, I wouldn't say that he doesn't become the hero. He becomes the you know, what we now know as the anti-hero, the reluctant
Yeah.
hero.
Yes.
He is a hero, but he doesn't want to be. But circumstances force his soul to take inventory of the situation and say, "These people need me. I will become one of those people if I don't help these people." And
Actually, yeah, you're right.
that's the line.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And because I think that, if you think about it, like he's still on some sort of basic level, still holds like the principles that he held before. And now it's just covered in scar tissue. And now you have to kind of really be pushed to kind of, I guess, want to even engage in society to be able to utilize that part of his, like, kind of his nature. Because he
Right.
is a good guy. Like that's the whole. And I wish the movie did a better job of kind of explaining that about Max. You don't like you're not shown that about Max. You were told that about Max. Like that's like when he goes to, like I said, when he goes to put his papers in, the guy just yells at him his character traits. But we're not shown any of that stuff. That's never like part of the movie.
Right.
And
Yeah, I mean, you know, it is one of those things where it's like, man, if he had made this when he was further along, would it have been a better movie? Well, of course it would have been. It would have been The Road Warrior. And I think that
yeah,
that's kind of one of the cool things that the Mad Max series highlights about George Miller is that his growth as an artist and a director to the point where you get to, you know, well, we'll start off on, the original Mad Max, low budget, learning things on the fly, learning how to shoot a movie while you're shooting a movie. Road Warrior, or Mad Max 2, he's perfected, not perfected, but he's really ironed out all those techniques. He's got a
mhm.
little bit of a budget now. And then in 3, he's got a budget, but he's got the studio telling him what to do. And they're like, "Yeah, you got to put Tina Turner in here. She's going to write a #1 hit single for the."
I know.
And
Going
but
to the Thunderdome. It's like such. It's not. That's not what it is, but
yeah, but
it's
it's
basically
basically
that.
what it is. That's what it is. And then you have Fury Road, which you get to the point of Fury Road, and he's like conducting a symphony. He's an absolute master.
Oh, it's crazy. I mean, Fury Road, I never get sick of that movie.
No,
It's so gorgeous. Like the action they captured was insane. It's the perfect mix of like of computer like enhanced stuff and practical effects. Like it's so much so that it's seamless, and when it's obvious, it's beautiful. Like, when
and
you
it's
see
such
like
a
the
beautiful
storm
payoff
clouds.
because every single thing that all the other movies wanted to do, Fury Road knocks out of the fucking park.
Oh my god, dude, yes. I mean, like it's just a movie that every frame is beautiful. Like every moment is memorable in the Fury Road. It is in a large part, like you said, it's the greatest hits of Mad Max. Like if you've seen the other movies, you understand how we get to Fury Road. It's like this coda, the coda of Mad Max, of what
Yeah,
like a Mad Max movie should feel like. But the crazy part is that he's in his 70s when he does that. Everybody hated him while they were making it. Tom Hardy especially. He had no idea what was going on because it's such a technical showcase. So like he's like, what do you mean? Like you just grabbing random shots, and they didn't understand what he was trying to create. That movie actually doesn't even have a formal script. It's like a comic book. He just gave them the storyboards with annotated storyboards. Didn't even fucking bother to write a script. And if this had made when it first was supposed to be made, it was supposed to be made in like 2004 with Mel Gibson. And they built all the sets. They had all the cars. They had all that stuff. and they were going to film it in Afghanistan. And then what happens in 2004 in Afghanistan happens, and apparently, and then on top of that, they had this historical rainfall where the desert actually turned lush and green. So it didn't happen, but they actually spent all the production budget back in 2004 trying to make it with Mel Gibson, which is crazy to think about, actually. But and
It
then
is.
he spent like 3 years in post on Fury Road as well. I mean, they shot that movie in like 2012 or something like that. It doesn't come out till 2015.
Yeah, man. I mean, good things come to those who wait. I mean, he must have agonized over every single thing because he probably also realized that was his last Mad Max movie.
Yeah, because it was hard for him to get the budget, get a studio to make it. Honestly, it was because Mad Max is like, amongst cinephiles or amongst like nerds or whatever. Yeah, we know what Mad Max is. We've watched Mad Max, but like the general public, they don't know what the fuck Mad Max is. Not really. Not in the same way that like we do.
They understand the symbolism that came from it because it's part of, like, when you think of the post-apocalypse, a lot of the
Yeah,
visuals that you see in your brain come from the
yeah,
Mad Max world. It's just been absorbed by so many other
yeah.
post-apocalyptic things.
It's influenced everything you've seen that's come after it. Yeah, like you said, video games like Fallout especially is pretty heavily cribbed from Mad Max. There's actually a video game that's like a Fallout spin-off or made by the original creators of Fallout called The Wasteland, which is what they call the territory in Mad. And I think in the Road Warrior they start calling it the Wasteland. Um, I had something in my mind, now it's gone. uh, what was I thinking? I was thinking of something. It was going to be good. I promise you.
Hey, man, all
Um,
thoughts have a half-life like a war boy, and
Oh, that's what I was going to say. Like the reason why people were skeptical of Fury Road being able to make money or whatever, or him getting the budget for it, is the same reason. Like people went on the assumption like, have you seen Blade Runner 2049?
I haven't yet. No, I haven't even seen
Okay.
the original Blade Runner.
Oh my
Boy,
god. Well, so the studio gives that dude $250 million to make a sequel to Blade Runner, only to find out that only nerds like Blade Runner and people just pretend to like it.
yeah,
So that movie bombs, and I think they're gonna have the same thing is gonna happen with Dune, because same guy who did 2049 is doing Dune, and I don't think they realize like Dune is a very niche thing. Like that is not for wide
yeah.
audiences. But hey, I'll enjoy it. Like, but
Well, it's just like, studio executives at this point, their primary concern is like plumbing the depths of anything that's been successful before because it's a surefire to make money, they think. And they don't understand always why things are successful or why things are popular or how popular they are, like you said, outside of certain circles.
Mhm.
Like things seep into the cultural zeitgeist, and the actual original thing that it came from isn't really popular, you
Exactly,
know?
because there's like a generation, or kind of like the anecdote you said about like the Road Warrior. Like you saw these gifts, right? A lot of people, there's an entire generation of people that only know these older movies through memes. They've actually
Right,
never seen the movies. So they
right.
have no weight with them. It doesn't mean anything to them. It's just completely an ephemeral thing. It's just like, they misunderstand the idea that like a brand just brings money, an IP just brings money, and it doesn't. Like it's who makes the movie. When they remade RoboCop, it's only RoboCop in title. Like it has nothing to do with RoboCop. It's just
Yeah,
like you wanted to make a cyborg cop movie, and you just slapped the name RoboCop on it because you thought like, oh, people like RoboCop. When it's not really.
right.
People don't really like RoboCop.
Yeah, and Mad Max is one of those franchises where the imagery from it, the aesthetic from it, has influenced so many other things that people know what Mad Max is all about when they've never seen it. You could potentially, like I did, watch a Mad Max movie and feel like you've been in that universe before
Yeah,
because you
exactly.
pretty much have. You
Yeah, it's
know,
like it's cultural osmosis. It's just like you've consumed so many things that were inspired by it, like you feel like you know it already to a certain extent.
and
Um,
I think that that's one of the uh, I don't know. That's one of the things about the original Mad Max that when you go back to it, it has so much less of that aesthetic than the
Yeah.
other movies. And like for me, it threw me off. I was like, is this takes place in the same universe? Where are all the sand dunes? Where's all the hockey masks? Where's all the
Hmm.
people in crazy get-ups and stuff?
Yeah.
And it's because, this is probably 5 years before all that. And it's there to sort of slowly guide you into that world. And like you said, like all the apocalyptic stuff is understated. It's on the radio. It's
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 on the radio. There's signs about no-go zones and don't
right.
go down this road. And X amount of people have died on this road. We don't, it's just there's marauders there. Kind of like it's kind of very old West movie. It's like, yeah, well, might not want to go down by Hanging Rock because there's Jesse's gang is down there and
Right. And it's not
they're
an
real
old
bastards.
movie in the sense that it's a frontier that we're taming. It is a civilization that has been tamed that's reverting back to a frontier. So there's this
Yes.
bittersweet heartbreak about the loss of something wonderful that we all collectively had. And now we're literally going to be gouging each other's eyes out for water, gasoline, and pussy forever.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Because when I first saw Mad Max, the original one, like I had watched The Road Warrior, and my dad, we bought the movie. I just had it at my house. I randomly put it on when I was like 10 years old, and then watched it like 100 times. And then I find Mad Max, the original, at the library of all places. Remember those kids? And I was like super excited. I was like, "Oh, cool, dude! Oh, fucking, oh, nice, more like the Road Warrior." I
Right.
watched. I was so disappointed. I was so like crestfallen. I'm like, "This movie sucks, dude." I was like 14, 15. I was like, I don't like this movie."
No, for real. That was kind of my reaction to the first Mad Max. I had to watch it 2 or 3 times to really get butter on that bread.
Yeah, but I coming back to it now though, because when we were talked a few days ago, it's the one I've seen the least, probably out of all of them. And I appreciated it more in context of the series. I think it's like it is actually like a good origin story. It's the world on the precipice. We get to learn so much about kind of the nature of people already, even the civilized people. Like everybody's kind of starting to angle for themselves and get desperate to a certain degree. Like there's a scene with that mechanic guy, like obviously he's kind of sells them out, and Max has to go interrogate them to find where Toe Cutter is. Like so, everybody's already kind of in this place of being desperate, but they just haven't realized it yet. They don't really understand. Some people don't know how far things have gone, and
I mean, I'm not trying to be cliche or hyperbolic, but it's kind of the same place that we're in right now in society.
dude, I'm not actually. I do not entirely disagree with you.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you have a situation. I mean, this summer we watched people being pulled out of their cars and beaten for
Yes.
going down the wrong road. And we watched the justice system stand by and allow it to happen. In fact, I saw one video of a person who drove through these so-called protesters um, because they were smashing the windows of his car and attacking his car. And then 3 blocks later, as he's getting away, the police pull him over and arrest him.
Yeah.
Okay,
Or I mean, even a few
this
months
this
ago,
is
there's
the
a
fucking shit that drives people crazy.
no. It really does. It really does because it's such a it's like it's gaslighting. You feel like you're being gaslit. You're like, what the fuck are you talking about? A
And,
guy, I can't remember what state it was. Like people, because maybe it must have been Portland. It must have been Oregon, rather. Like they started going into neighborhoods, which the media just doesn't. They don't cover it. They don't talk about it. They're going into suburban neighborhoods. A guy had the audacity to sit by his window with a gun. So they stop at his house. They're yelling all this stuff at him, calling him a racist, calling him all these things because there are things to say. And the police come and arrest him for brandishing a weapon.
and this is the kind of stuff, dude. Look, I got about 3 minutes before I have to pull this bread out of the oven, so we can wrap it up. Um, this is the kind of stuff that drives people insane. We have Mad Maxes in this country every day. People who shoot up their workplace, people who go and take it out on people by going on a mass stabbing spree or something. These people are experiencing the same thing that Max experienced, except they are not reacting to it in a noble way. They're just reacting to it with violence.
And like
And
and you have the average person who feels the same way Mac does, where there's a reluctance to give over to that, right? Like they don't want to. They want to believe that the world has order. They want to believe that justice still has a place in a traditional sense, just like Max does. Until Max, has until you are pushed to this brink where you actually literally have everything stripped from you. Um,
I really think that that's why so many people. It's not just an MK Ultra Mossad thing. That I think that there are actually people out there on a daily basis who hit that same wall of insanity, and they don't have any righteous vengeance to take it out with, so they just walk into their office and start shooting people, or they just, I don't know,
yeah.
drop a kid off a balcony or some shit.
Oh
And
yeah.
I feel like we're going to see this more and more as society gets shakier and shakier, and the foundations of our justice system get more and more tender. But it's just, what we aren't going to see is heroes like Mad Max. We're going to see more villains
Well,
because,
because just like there is toe cutters out there, and
right,
like when good men do nothing, those people they're opportunists.
right,
They
and
see the writing on the wall. They see they can. This is how they can assert their control and dominance and power, just like everybody wants.
right, and good men out there who want to exact some kind of righteous vengeance on these people, like me, can't actually do it because we know, like, I know if I went out there and started, if I went to my old town in New Jersey where I grew up, which is ruined, it's a fucking crater in the earth now. If
Yeah,
I went there and started like a vigilante, just hunting down the scumbags and the rapists and the drug dealers and the pimps that have turned that fucking neighborhood that I grew up in into the place that it is today, I would be taken to jail. So it's
yeah,
like, the entire system is set up to kind of allow for this type of shit. But, this is the kind of thing that drives people crazy. And like I said, there's not going to be a lot of hero Mad Maxes. There's just going to be people lashing out in anger. Um, because for somebody to lash out in righteous anger and righteous violence, they have to come from a very specific place. And I think that we just, we, like, most people are just in too jaded and nihilistic of a place. They just want to hurt
yeah,
other people because of the hurt that they feel.
yeah. I think that's true. I think that's true. And that manifests itself whether you're on the internet. It manifests itself on like in real life. It manifests itself. Everybody, like I said, people have a sense of like emotional desperation, and they don't know
And
where to put it.
they know in real life that even if they dressed up as Batman and became a successful vigilante, there's no like working with the police next year. There's no like convincing Commissioner Gordon that you're one of the good guys and now you're going to work on the skirt. No, you're just going to get
No, they're
beat
just
by the
they're
police,
gonna beat
have
you up. Yeah.
your stupid vigilante tights taken off, and you're going to get sent to jail. Okay. So yeah, there is no Mad Max in the real world because if you try to go Mad Max in the real world, the actual establishment crashes down on you. But hold on, I
Yes.
gotta pull this. I gotta pull this bread out. Give me like 1 minute, and maybe we can like start working on the outro or something. I'll be right back.
Okay. Cool.
Let me tell you something about my wife. My wife puts a loaf of bread in the oven and then goes to bed while I'm doing a very important episode of Zoobox Goes to the Movies.
Truly, truly, she's like, how can that's trust, Dan? I mean, that's trust.
I mean,
I
this
don't
lady
know.
hasn't played. She hasn't played the saxophone for me in months.
Oh my God, Dan. Maybe you should have left it in and taught her a lesson. I'm just saying. I was joking. I'm joking, Caitlin, if you're there.
Hey, honey, go walk through those woods over there. Go spend 3 hours on that beach, not in peril.
Yeah. No, don't worry. It's a nice sequence. It's a nice sequence. You got a nice ass. That's fine.
But yeah, man, I mean, that's kind of all I have to say about Mad Max, and that's kind of what I wanted to do. Why I wanted to have it as the first episode, me being back on this series, because it is a little Reese's peanut butter cup. There's not much to say about it. It's just kind of good.
Yeah, it's just kind of enjoyable, and I really, like I said before, like I really do enjoy it more now for various reasons. Just because I think I respect what it took to make it, and also I think it works well as part of the series of Mad Max.
Yeah,
It
certainly.
works well as like it's like the first half of Batman Begins.
Yeah,
Like that's kind of what it is.
yeah. I
I
think that
wish.
you can love Road Warrior, but I think if you understand what happened before it, you really really love it. And
Oh,
if you watch the first Mad Max movie and you think it's boring or just stupid or plotting, take it in a couple times because there's so much more stuff going on there. It's just kind of hard to digest because George Miller didn't really know how to chew it up and spit it into your mouth for you.
yeah, he didn't have his like kind of his craftsman chops just weren't sharpened yet. But I do like I actually when I watched this a couple weeks ago, before I watched it this afternoon, I watched that and the Road Warrior back to back, and it makes the Road Warrior even better. Like it makes the Road Warrior cooler.
Yeah, when you actually when I was watching it the other night, we didn't finish it. We got to like we got to like the last 20 minutes of it, and then the next night we finished the last 20 minutes of it, and then started on the Road Warrior. And it, yeah, I mean, it kind of makes both movies better to watch them kind of
I
as
agree.
one,
I
you know.
totally agree. Like it's cool. Like and that's another thing I respect about Miller, about not trying to repeat himself. Like he really wasn't trying to repeat himself by making the same movie. It's not obvious sequel bait. I don't think any of them are obvious Well, maybe Fury Road, but it had been so long in between Thunderdome and Fury Road, and it's so well made, you just kind of don't care. Um,
Yeah, and right, Miller could have very easily done like Max drives to the next town over and deals with the gang situation in that town over there. Instead,
yeah,
it's like cut to Dunescape. Everybody's in weird leather, and like the aesthetic is not. I wouldn't say completely different, but it's like the aesthetic of Mad Max cranked all the way
yeah.
up to
You can see
20,
you
dude.
can see like the culture of like the gangs that they show you in Mad Max, even the culture of the police, right? You can see how it would be like that in a weird way. Like honestly, it makes kind of sense. However crazy it gets with like Lord Humongous and the Mohawk dude, like which Lord Humongous is awesome. I mean, come on,
Dude, Lord
nobody defies
Humongous is
Lord Humongous.
probably. I mean, dude, the fucking name Lord Humongous, like you're already on some good ground right there.
We have come for the gasoline.
Yeah, and I love how he's just like, and this isn't the Road Warrior review, but like all the villains in Mad Max are just like cool as a fucking cucumber. They're just
Yeah,
like, they can't be bullied, they can't be intimidated by
yeah,
Max. They're just like when you have a dude who calls him not only calls himself humongous, but he basically just wears a couple straps of leather and a hockey mask
that's confidence.
to show off his fucking huge physique. Like I don't know, like everything about the aesthetic of Road Warrior, like you said, is just like they take all the threads of Mad Max and just jack it up, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
And I don't think that it's a mistake, or maybe he didn't do completely on purpose, but I think that when you look at Humongous's gang, there's three or four police cruisers in there
hmm
and the guys who drive the police cruisers are like wearing the leather
yeah.
cop uniforms. It's almost like even that last bit of order has been absorbed into the chaos. You know,
Yes, yeah.
now the police belong to Humongous, motherfucker.
Well, yeah, because like I think they make slight reference to that in the original movie Mad Max, where they're just like, we're not that much different from these dudes sometimes. Like some of the people that are the police officers in Mad Max really are just like crazy hot rod dudes, and they are just like a point of view away from like just being just as bad. Like there's nothing that indicates that they're actually doing this for any other reason than, hey, dude, this is pretty fun. Like we're
Here's
driving
the
cars,
theory for
chasing
you.
people.
So the villain in part two, Lord Humongous, is this big muscly dude who has a bunch of cops, like former not former cops, but like guys in police uniforms in police underneath of him. But Max's police captain, who was called
Oh,
Fifi.
Fifi.
Fifi is a huge jacked dude. Maybe
Mm.
Humongous is Fifi,
Maybe
bro.
that's some deep lore. You
Well,
should make a
no,
YouTube video.
this is the kind of shit that people do with Mad Max all the time. Like, oh, maybe Humongous is Fifi. Maybe Mad Max and Fury Road is the feral kid.
Yeah, it's the Feral Kid. That's the one I would keep hearing all the time. Because they're just like, no, dude, don't you understand? Max is a myth. He's a legend. He's mythological, dude. Like he doesn't have to. He's represents something. I was like, no.
No, no, I just think that George Miller doesn't give a fuck about continuity.
No, he doesn't. And in the fact in Fury Road, he retcons. It's not the son that dies; it's his daughter that dies.
Yeah,
He
and I
doesn't care
don't know why he like. I don't understand why he would do little things like that.
because
But what?
Fury Road is like has a deep subtext of like feminist theory. He had the writer of the Vagina Monologues on set to talk to the women because it's all about patriarchy controlling female bodies
Yeah, it's very
and
2015.
yeah, and like femininity. Literally, they have women hooked up to machines milking them. They're drinking mother's milk, and they're there just to breed babies. And that's what he has is like harem. They're just there to
Actually,
breed.
that's when Caitlin and I first started dating. Well, I think the first movie we watched together was Fury Road, and I
Yeah,
got her to watch it because I said this is a movie about motherhood.
it kind of technically it kind of is right
It
because
is.
Furiosa is the grand metaphor for like the matriarchy. Like she's the powerful woman. She will not be deterred. She's seen what's happened to these other women, these old hags. They didn't make it. They didn't make it. They stood for
Uh,
something, and now I stand on their shoulders and I come back as a liberator.
I don't want to go on too much about the other Mad Max movies because this one's just supposed to be about the first one. But I
Yeah.
mean, Fury Road. Every little character in that movie is great. Like you just made me think about the Keeper of the Seeds, the old
Mm-hmm.
lady.
Yeah.
And when I first saw Fury Road, I was deep into gardening. I lived in Santa Fe. I had my own little beautiful garden. I've been too busy the last couple years to really. It frustrates me. I haven't really grown a garden the last couple years, and it chaps my ass. But when I watched that the first time, I had just started saving my own seed, and it was probably my fourth year of gardening, fifth year, and I was really getting to kind of like a varsity level of gardening. And when that old lady opened up the bag of seeds and she talked about how if anybody ever tried to touch that bag, she'd pop them right here in the back of the medulla. Oh God, I fucking love that old
Well,
lady.
because
And
that's another theme of the movie. It's like this naturalistic approach to life, kind of denying this idea of industrialization that's come with Immortan Joe and his cohorts. They're
but also again, Sean, that idea of righteous violence. The seeds in this bag are could be totally important to the future of humanity.
exactly, yeah, 100%.
The old lady who, or even if I personally don't believe in hurting other people, I will fucking shoot you through the eye if you come and try to touch this bag because it's that important.
Well, because the
And
stakes, yeah, exactly, the stakes are that high.
right, and righteous violence is one of the cornerstones of the Mad Max series, and I think it's one of the things that draws me to it because, look, it is undeniable. I'm a person who kills things for a living. It's part of my job to shoot things through the face, and even though they're animals, that to me doesn't make it much less more of a big deal than shooting a human through the face, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
And I am completely in tune with the idea that violence is a part of peace. Violence is a part of goodness. Is a violence doesn't always necessarily need to be evil or bad. Sometimes it can be channeled in a direction that is used to protect good people, and
well, because
that's
that's yeah. At some point, you have to fight back. It requires you to do that. Like it's not
right.
everybody gets like no matter where you are in history, at some point, like people get pushed to that
Because
for
you
altruism.
push and push and push until something pushes back. It's like the concept of entropy. Things will just fall into chaos unless there is a lot of energy expended to build order.
Hmm.
And that righteous violence is that energy. But you have to be very brave, you have to be very skilled, and you have to not give a shit because, again, like we pointed out in this conversation, if you're going to enact righteous violence, the actual system is probably going to come down on you for it.
Yes, if there's a system left there to come down on you, yes. And I think
Well,
sometimes, like I think
like
Mad Max, you could suggest is like a cautionary tale in the sense of like what happens when you wait too long. What happens when you wait too long? When the scales are tipped too far in the other way. So as a series, we know as the series went, they waited too long. They
yeah,
waited too long to drop the hammer, right?
they
Because that's
talked and talked and talked, as they say in the second movie. But I mean, yeah, I mean, that is where evil flourishes, in these spaces where good people sit around and say, well, we're good, so we don't do violence. And because I'm a person who experiences violence on a pretty regular basis in the form of my job, I understand that it's literally a necessity in like feeding people. Violence is a necessity in so many facets of life. It's just in the modern world, we are insulated from it.
yeah, I'd agree with that because like just because of well, I guess industrialization, we are all those kind of things are an abstract. Like you have a tangible relationship with how a piece of meat gets to somebody's plate, right? Most people don't have that. They go to Walmart and they look at it and they say, oh, okay. They don't even think about like all of the things that happen to make that happen. They don't
Nor do they
understand that
have,
it's part of the natural cycle of existence and we get to benefit from it without having to experience it. I suppose you call that progress. I don't know what you call it,
I wouldn't.
but
I mean, it's profitable for me, but it's not progress. In the same way that people are kept away from the idea of violence being a good thing, because we don't want individuals in the society to think about violence as an option. The violence, the monopoly on violence is all in the state. The state doesn't want you taking things into your own hands. And what
yes.
the movies like Mad Max or Batman or the Ninja Turtles or anything that has to do with vigilantes using violence in order to make things more peaceful, what we really need is an excuse. What guys like you and I don't have is an excuse. Max gets the excuse of the apocalypse. The turtles get the excuse of they're not even humans. They live in the sewers. They like aren't even in normal society. Batman has the excuse of his parents were killed and he was pushed over the edge, and he actually has the wherewithal and the skill and the ability to keep one step ahead of the police. I do think even the most ballless man deep down inside knows what needs to be done in order to secure peace and wishes that he had the power to do it. What we don't have is that excuse. And that's why we love mythology like Mad Max. That's why we love mythology like Batman, because these men are given the opportunity and the excuse to use the one thing that men do well, which is violence, in order to secure a peaceful future for the people they love. And we live that power fantasy through media, because in this day and age, our so-called justice system has the monopoly on violence, and it's a complete failure. And we live in a place and time where justice is kind of up in the air. Justice is something that goes to the highest bidder. So we kind of disappear into stories like Mad Max because we wish that there was a Max out there cleaning things up for us, because we don't have the balls or the ability, or we have too much to lose.
I know. I think very well said, and I think that is, I like you would call it like your lizard brain. I would call it kind of primal intuition. That's why these movies are so popular. That's why they endure. I mean, they are like you go look through like the history of vigilante movies. Most of them are like, well, I guess most of the Hollywood ones are like they're very popular movies. Like people do respond on some sort of visceral level of the ability to take matters into your own hands
Yeah,
because you
like I
don't
mean,
want to feel the idea that like this is the great myth of like the police, right? Is this idea that like the police come after something happens, guys. They don't come before. They come after. You call them out of desperation. You don't call them before it happens. You're not a precog, okay? You're not living a Minority Report. Um, so this idea, and then the notion that like everybody should be kind of like dismantled. We should not have any kind of notions about knowing how to defend ourselves. Like we're not even talking about like you may describe it as violence. I just see it as practicality. I see it as like I should be able to know how to defend myself. I should be a competent physical person, own a firearm, et cetera, et cetera. Like those are important things. Those are important things. And for some reason, the state wants to do nothing more than to fucking neuter you of those things and tell you that you don't need them as they assert more and more dominance over your life while allowing the world to burn around you. They let it happen. They let it happen for petty politics because they didn't want somebody to get elected president or whatever, they'll sacrifice your life and your business and your
They also
neighborhood.
fucking hate you.
They do. They have nothing in common with you. Are you fucking kidding me? You live on different planets. You might as well be living on Xenu, buddy. Me, you, and
I'm
Tom
just
Cruise. We're
gonna
going to
wrap.
Xenu.
I mean, yeah, and that's why we want it. That's why we want it so bad because like when I'm thinking in particular at this in this moment of that scene in the trailer for the new Batman movie where it's just like a 15-second clip of that doesn't cut away of
Mm-hmm.
Batman just beating some dude's fucking skull into the ground while the rest of the dude's gang looks on like and there is something so satisfying about seeing Batman clobber a villain's brain
Yeah.
into the fucking sidewalk. I can't describe it. And I know not everybody out there is going to agree with me because a lot of people out there are going to, probably not Zoobox viewers, but you're going to be, a little bit more genteel, a little more nonviolent. Look, I'm here to tell you that that shit is a fucking facade that is built for you to feel safe while while you're watching Netflix and eating a fucking Hungry Man dinner. You
Yeah.
only exist in that type of peace because men before you enacted great violence. And that's a cliche, but it's a fucking truth, man. And I
Well, it's
and
not.
I think that's why our lizard brains love these kind of stories.
Yeah, and like it's this no, it's like a deeper philosophical notion of like what does it mean to have integrity? What does it mean to stand for a principle or a virtue? We don't have that. We have an opportunistic government, like with politicians that's just there to maintain power. They don't really care about you. They're not thinking about that kind of stuff at all. They're just looking out for themselves. They already live in some sort of neo post-apocalyptic mindset. They're desperate and hungry, and they scurry and scavenge and do whatever they can to stay where they are. That's all they want. And they don't care what it costs. And it costs all of us a great deal.
It's going to cost us everything. It's going to cost us our entire fucking civilization, I think, eventually. I mean, the absolute best case scenario at this point would be a Walking Dead type thing where civilization collapses completely and we just sort of like have like little bands of survivors that are like growing turnips and shit. What's actually going to happen is like an economic balkanization brought on by several other enormous powers in the world where you get to the point where uh, basically foreign governments are controlling our interests and
Yes, it's already happening.
we don't even realize it's happening. Yeah, exactly. It's already happening. We don't
It's
even
already
realize it's
happening.
happening because we're too busy with our fucking Doritos 3D.
Oh
Which
no,
actually, one of my friends texted me the other day and told me that Doritos 3D are back on the market just in time for me to not storm the Capitol again. Thank you.
I had notions of revolution, but
Dude, I was going to storm the Capitol next time, but now we have Doritos 3D sweet chili.
yeah, how could I do it with all this cheese in my hands? God damn, boy.
How can I storm the Capitol when there's so much extreme flavor in my mouth right now?
Insert that fucking Neil deGrasse Tyson like whoa gif.
But yeah, I mean, it will take, I think, a total collapse, but I don't think a total collapse is going to happen. I think that the system is too robust, and there are other systems at work that have too much invested in our system, at least continuing to work as a skeleton
No,
of what it.
we need to be slaves.
Yeah, it's
We need to be serfs. Like
right. A total Walking Dead economic societal collapse is not
yeah,
profitable, and
we're
though,
gonna
or it will not happen
yeah,
ever.
they're gonna start figuring out how to give you just enough to survive, so you can never climb up a ladder, you can never be anything. You're gonna live in despair. Half the people are gonna kill themselves, and then the
But it's
rest are gonna be there to toil away and consume. I
I
mean,
was
like
I was just talking about this on the latest episode of 1000 RPM, which is my
I saw, yeah.
invite only podcast minicast. Where yeah, I mean the whole game now is for you to. It's not for you to be destitute. It's for you to have just enough to pay your bills,
Mhm.
or just a little less than you need to pay your bills. Never enough to save. Never enough to get ahead. Always just enough to keep you fucking working. Keep that economic. And this is this isn't just a crazy racist propaganda here. The reason that they want immigrants from the third world to come into the first world is because they cost about a third.
Yeah, it's slave labor.
You're too expensive.
It's slave labor, and they drive down your value. Like that's all it is. And people are like, oh yeah, but the GDP and the market, and like motherfucker, if I have to pay $200 more for a fucking laptop, then that's the way it goes, dude. Like, what are you
If,
fucking these? What are you
if
talking
you're
about?
if you're a person who makes less than $100,000 a year, and
Hey
you're
now,
in the words GDP and market come out of your mouth, sorry, I can't hear you over the cock that's in your mouth. Okay,
yeah.
because you have look, the GDP has nothing to do with how well a society, a country, or anything is doing. It has to do with how well a stock market is doing.
Well,
Okay.
that's they bring that stuff up because they want to make the immigrant argument, like, and not like the open borders argument or whatever. It's just like, well, our GDP goes up, things cost less. Things you are given the savings. We're having a rollback moment.
Right. It's so that you will accept that paradigm, whether it's a humanitarian thing when you're on the left or it's an economic thing when you're on the right. When in actuality, it's just a plan to undermine all of us, not only the citizens of the United States, but the fucking poor people who
But
get
the
brought
poor
into this
people,
country to be worked as fucking
yeah,
slave labor,
exactly. Like the
hauled into a
Mexicans,
fucking trailer on a corn farm or something.
well, we both lived in Boston, right? Like we both lived in Boston. Like what are like the Mexican community, like the Puerto Ricans? They all live like 30 people in a fucking apartment, like just like stacked in there, and then they all work on food trucks. Like they're not like that's not like a happy life.
Right,
Come
and
on.
that's the paradigm
They're
that
not
they
out
want.
there living the American dream, moving
Exactly.
furniture. The
But
only
they're
thing,
living.
the only thing, and the negative fallout from that was I couldn't get a job moving furniture because I was not bilingual. I
That
was like, really? I can't pick up a fucking couch and move it up some stairs? Like, nah,
Well,
dude, you
yeah,
got to
if
be
you don't
bilingual.
know the difference between up or down in Spanish, then you can't do it. But that's just it. Is that it's you know it's so frustrating to talk about because it's like if you come down on either side of the issue, you get painted as a thing. But the whole point is that all of us are too expensive, and we need to be made into economic units that are cheaper. So they're just like, okay, well, we'll just bring in all these people who are used to have a lower standard of living. I mean, when you talk about 30 people to an apartment and everybody works in a food truck, you're talking about the Great Reset.
I
These are
know.
people. These are people who are already primed for the Great Reset. So they just bring them in. They say, well, look, uh, uh, American people of every racial group have a negative birth rate. So we'll get rid of these pesky white, black, and Hispanic Americans by just bringing in like Somalis, South Americans, Chinese, and Indians. And, you know, that this greed, this sort of like um, constant grinding people into the mortar and pestle while gaslighting them into thinking that this is happening for some sort of humanitarian reason. This is the shit that was driving society crazy in Mad Max,
Mhm.
and this is the shit that's driving society crazy today. And the thing that's most in common is that our leaders are totally fucking inept. All they care about is themselves, and they will never actually reach a solution for any of this.
No,
They
because
will
that's
simply
not.
talk and line their fucking pockets until everything maybe does collapse, and then they fucking spirit away to whatever island they own or whatever.
There is no power in a solution. It doesn't
No.
exist. Because as soon as you solve a problem, you abdicate, so you give something up. You're like you've solved something, so you, in a sense, like in an abstract way, you've given something back to your people, the population, whatever. That's why war is important to these people. That's why conflict is important. That's why the media will push, racial tensions up way past where it belongs. Like, way past where. That's why they will just bore it into your fucking head every fucking day. You're a piece of shit. Like, if you're gonna tell me they take the majority, we're getting a little spicy here. They get like the majority of the U.S. population is white, right? So what do they do all day? They just demonize white people. Like, how can that be a healthy thing for a productive society? It can't. It cannot be. And I'm not even saying racially. Like, say if it was black people that were like the majority race in the country, like it would not be good for you to go out and say that they're all evil or that they're all implicitly racist or something or whatever terms they decide to use. Like, it's just meant to destroy you. That's all it is. It has nothing to do with equity. It has nothing to do with, like Dan would say, like humanitarian feelings or effort. Nothing. That's not what it's happening. It's not what's happening.
Right. I think that again, we're getting a little spicy here, but I think that they know that white Americans are the spearhead of people who won't put up with our living standard being stripped away from us because, like,
Uh, yeah,
we
until they
expect
hook you on opioids, and they give you just enough to subsist over a long enough period, like they did with everyone else.
exactly, and it doesn't like I used to think that it was some kind of racial destruction thing. They're doing the same thing to fucking black people that they're doing to us. It is
No,
about the fact
exactly.
that we
No,
are
look at
too
what
expensive.
look at what happened to black people from the 60s to now, and understand what happened when like the welfare system was put in place, like what that actually did to the community. Like they were not allowed to prosper. And look at what's happening to people of all races now. Like now that is the prototype. That's the test case. Like how can you do something you call the social experiment that fails horribly and then and then just keep going because you don't want to say you were. It's not even that you don't even want to say you're wrong. You've just convinced everybody that this is a virtuous act, even though you're actively destroying people's lives. And there's neighborhoods just ridden with crime, and kids have no fucking way out, and there is no, like, oh my god, like imagine. And then you have like the entertainment era, like they're all saying like, nah, dude, you don't gotta have a fucking dad. Dads are lame. You
Dude,
don't need to
families
come from a
are
nuclear
stupid.
family. And we talked about this last time we talked. People do not respect how far and how long it took humanity to figure out the importance of the nuclear family and how that brings an incredible stability. And they are going to do everything to undermine it because that is your power. That's your foundation. That's everything. My son is going to be a king. Don't you understand?
I know, and we've gone pretty far off the rails, but to bring it back
I know.
in, I
I
mean,
know.
that's one of the things that sets Max off is that they destroy his family,
Exactly.
and
No, but exactly right.
it is a I don't want to say it's a blessing to Max, but it is for
When you take
Max's character, it's what allows him to push over the edge. See, our families are being destroyed, but they're not being destroyed by a biker gang.
no, it's slow motion, it's erosion, it's undermining, it's subversive.
Exactly. So
Yes.
we don't get that firecracker moment where we get to say, my family was destroyed by X, therefore I'm going to exact vengeance on X. We deal with this slow decay, which is confusing,
It's
and we don't even
abstract.
know what the
Yeah.
source of the decay is most of the time. And what we just see the tangible effects of it. I remember when I lived in Boston and I would be hanging out with my immigrant friends from Colombia and from Iran and from all different parts of the world and they had these huge families with these huge family gatherings.
Hmm.
And I kind of said to myself, that was when I began to sort of have a realization about where we were as a culture and as a civilization is that, like, where the fuck did our huge family gatherings go? Where did our families go? They're gone.
No,
And
it's like a turn of the century. I mean, like you can track this stuff from like the 1930s onward. Honestly, it's like the invention of the radio and television and propaganda and like how powerful that was. And
and I don't think that it's any mistake or not mistake. I don't think it's any coincidence that now we have a world and a society where people are going fucking mad on a daily basis and losing it and enacting terrible acts of violence on other people because much in the same way that this character that we're talking about lost his family was pushed over the edge, we've all lost our families, but we've lost it to this sort of theoretical
yeah,
weird,
yeah,
like we can't even put our
it's too.
finger on what we've lost our families to.
Exactly. It's too widespread. It's too nebulous. It's like, because at the end of the day, it's everything. It's the movies you watch. It's the TV shows. It's the education system. It's the
Right.
government. It's like it's so expansive that it is overwhelming and it's terrifying. Like being a father in 2021 is like a mildly terrifying experience. My kid's about to be school age, and like I really do struggle. I'm like, what do we do? Like, so we're gonna pay through the teeth to not send him to like a federally funded public school, and we can't afford that. Like, we cannot afford that. I mean, I don't trust myself to homeschool him. Once I get like a better job, I would trust my wife. I would trust her. I would not trust me. And right now, just because of like life circumstances, it would have to be me, and I just don't trust myself. Maybe
I
that's
trust
a
you're a smart guy.
yeah. We'll just watch Zoobox videos. We'll watch this. I'll be like, all right, today's lesson: Mad Max and the state of the world. Me and Professor Profitt coming down for you, Foster. Yeah, I let my son watch Aliens the other day. You think I'm like really?
Dude, you watch him watch, you let him watch AVP. It's all cool.
Oh my god, I almost did that out of guilt. I was like, all right, I don't care. This might traumatize you, but we're gonna watch this. I can't believe I did that to you. I'm sorry, son. I fell asleep while we were watching Aliens, and he's like, oh yeah, he's like, there's a chest burster, and I heard a crack. I was like, oh my god, what am I doing? But yeah, but Mad Max is an awesome movie, guys. You should check it
It
out.
is. It is.
It plays so much better in context of the series, and it actually gives you a lot to think about. And I think as you've just seen over the past like 25 minutes, it actually does inspire a lot of thought about kind of the state of the world beyond like even its place as a movie. Like it really does make you think about where you are. It feels eerily prescient in some sort of respect because we do feel like we're on a precipice of something right now. And I think in America, like people really feel like they're on some sort of edge and they don't quite understand it. Like we are kind of articulating. It's so hard to put your finger down on what it is, just like it is for Max. Like there is a level of denial I think that most people feel because they want to maintain stability. They don't want to ever have to cross that line. And it's worth thinking about like what does it mean to cross that line and like and when will that happen? Well, where are our thresholds? Or are we going to allow ourselves to be kind of undermined to the point where like we just become so complacent that we don't care? We sink into nihilism, we sink into despair, we sink into all of these things that are literally just driven into your fucking head constantly. It's so bizarre. Like all popular media just like tells you like why you're a fucking moron. Constantly like, trying to convince you that you're just a fucking idiot and you can never hope for something more. You can never be better. It's really frustrating. And that's why you should check out my short film Sad Guy 86 Eats a Hot Dog.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Yeah, you really want to get into existential despair. It is that's where we are. Anyways, so I apologize everybody for that little mini rant.
No, it's great. I think that the last half hour of this, I didn't have anything else to say about Mad Max, but I still have more to talk about regarding the themes about it.
Well, I think this is actually what I'm going to link at the end of this episode, everybody. If you've made it this far, I'm going to link our discussion about Starship Troopers. I think that was also because like that was also like a very tangential conversation where we really kind of got into the meat of some of this stuff and about, you know, uh, because like as much as we want like authority to step in and do something, like there is an aspect of it, like if the wrong person is in charge of doing it, like it can go wrong. Like it's not a set game. There's so many variables to everything. And that's honestly what makes it terrifying. And that's why good men have to like are incorruptibles. Like they have to stand up and do something. I don't know who that is anymore. There's nobody I can point to and just be like, oh wow, this is somebody I really respect and I think they're doing good work, whether it's a politician or otherwise. There's nobody. I live in a
You're not
fucking
trusting
wasteland.
Trump isn't going to take back the office?
Hold on. You got a hot 5 minutes to let me tell you why he's still going to be president.
You're starting the Freedom Party, dude.
Dude, the Freedom Party, dude. They got a lion. You see that lion, dude? Fuck.
Are you a patriot? If so, donate $5 to Donald Trump.
I know that's always the tag. That's what comes at the end of every politician. Anything they say. Hey, listen, we're really on the edge here, guys. If you don't donate to my campaign, I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know what's gonna happen. It's like gangsters. Like I don't know.
I don't know. I know that I don't necessarily have to spend these funds on my campaign. I can just kind of keep them tax free.
Yeah, we just gotta keep them in the bank. You know what I mean?
I know there's no chance of me actually winning this election, but I need another house.
Oh my God, that's like especially down at like this. Oh my God, yeah, down in
I
South
mean,
Carolina, we had a guy that like literally raised like $1 bajillion for a race that he could not ever possibly win, and you're like, where does all that money go? I don't know.
he's got a condo in Boca Raton.
Yeah, yeah.
Got a
But
timeshare.
He's got a timeshare in Australia on the edge.
That's what we had tonight. We spent about an hour and a half in our timeshare in the wasteland.
Yeah. What a, beautiful vistas, beautiful view. I gotta say, still kind of green. Still kind of green. I appreciate the signs telling me, don't go there. I like that. I
A
appreciate
little
that.
bit of rape.
Well, yeah,
There
but
was
like
more rape than I wanted.
only a little bit though. I mean, like,
Should we get on Yelp and talk about the rape?
oh my God. 3.5 stars, The Wasteland. There was a little rape. Otherwise, comfortable bed, beautiful views.
It was clean. It was nice. It was sunny. My
I
wife
woke up
kind of got raped though.
pancakes, fluffy and delicious, moist, delicious. Delivered by a kangaroo.
Sad face for the rape. All right. Well, I mean, that's all I have to say about it. I think this was another lovely edition of Zoobox Goes to the Movies. I can't
Oh,
wait
I
to do
love
it.
it. It's so, dude. Honestly, I'm so happy that I'm so happy that things worked out the way they did, so I could have you back on the show. Um, but like, it's awesome to have you back. I love our conversations. This was another great one. I'm glad. I actually like the tangents because I think it proves how I feel about art in general. I think like good art, good things should inspire something in you. It should inspire you to think about your life and the greater world around you. Like it doesn't need to just be some stupid fucking movie. That's like the most insidious thing about like modern popular cinema. Mad Max was like popular cinema in '79. Okay? And now we watch fucking Captain Marvel. That's how far we've fallen, everybody. That's how far we've fallen. It's awful. Anyways, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to know more about Zoobox, there's a bunch of links in the description for Facebook, for Instagram, for my Twitter, for my brother Dan's Twitter. You want to see some of his hot takes. Also, if you'd like to see something specific, if you've watched this and you're like, hey, you know, Profitt and Sean, I like their vibe. I want to see them talk about something specific. Let us know. Drop a comment. I'm sure we'll consider it. I'm sure we'll consider it. Anyways, thanks a lot, Dan. I really appreciate you coming on, man. It's
Thank you for
awesome.
having me back, and I can't wait to our next episode where I defend every Marvel movie to the death.
Dude, let's go. Let's roll. Oh, well, it won't be hard. It's the same fucking movie over and over again. All right, everybody. Have a good night. Goodbye.